Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cash Talk. Today I'm talking with a special guest, and today we're talking about weddings, one of the big events that obviously people plan for in their lives. But today I'm joined by the amazing Georgia Smith. Now I know that there's a hyphenation to that, so Georgia, you're going to
Yes,
have to help me later on with the pronunciation of your name,
no
but that's good.
problem.
That's cool. But Georgia is the owner and director of Mrs. Smith's Weddings. Mrs. Smith's Weddings plans weddings in some of the most picturesque locations in the world, from Santorini, Sicily, Sydney, and beyond. If you haven't seen, jump on Instagram. They're absolutely amazing, some of the weddings she plans for. So everyone, Georgia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So first and foremost, let's jump in. How do I pronounce the
Yeah.
surname?
So full name is Georgia Gravanis-Smith. So
Yeah,
Gravanis is my maiden name. And then when we got married, my husband's obviously Smith, and that's how Mrs. Smith Weddings came about. And I think that has a nicer ring than Mrs. Gravanis-Smith Weddings. So
so let me take a stab and say you're Greek.
I am.
Yeah, cool. So good. You'll know the locations in the Greek islands and stuff like that most better than most people. So I love it.
100%.
Me and my wife love the Greek islands, so we've been fortunate to go to Santorini.
Oh,
I've been to
beautiful.
Mykonos, and so I'll have to reach out for some other of those lovely islands that look absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So let's jump into it. So weddings is obviously a massive, big occasion for most people. Let's be honest. For the people who do get married, it's for us, it's one of the biggest financial commitments that they make, probably outside of their house and stuff like that. So we'll talk a lot about, like, obviously the financial side of things today, but I also want to know around, what you do, and let's share the stories of what you do and how you go about things. So, firstly, Georgia, how did you become a wedding planner?
Yeah, so I guess it really kind of derived from personal experience. We were engaged for about 3.5 years, and we first started looking at Sydney venues for ourselves. And being Greek, if we had the wedding here, it would have been 400-500 people, which just wasn't our style. So we started looking overseas, and we're huge travelers in a normal world when traveling is obviously allowed. So we were like, okay, why don't we do Greece? Obviously, we've got a personal connection to it. We're there every year. We love this place so much. And my husband and I were just like, okay, we love Santorini. Why don't we explore there? So we spent 3.5 years planning our day. And honestly, I fell in love with the whole process. Like, I loved communicating with the overseas vendors. I loved organizing. A little bit of OCD helps for sure. And we were just like, let's make this happen. So following our wedding, I loved it so much that I was in a HR role following my business degree at uni. And I was like, you know what, let's go all in. Let's quit my job and just open up Mrs. Smith Weddings like 6 months after we got married. So that's how it all came about.
That's absolutely amazing. There's a few lovely things about business that I'd love to talk to you maybe on another episode about it. But you being able to kind of change careers and jump into these things is absolutely amazing. But I think one of the things I'm hearing about, and this is very common, is your passion and your love for it. Yeah, and so for people that know me, they know how much I love what I do. I wake up every morning buzzing to do what I do, and it's really, really great to see that. So. When you're working as a wedding planner, obviously you love doing that and having that experience, but why do you love doing what you're doing? Like, explain to me, like, what wakes you up every morning and you're getting that buzz?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just working with a huge range of clients, like no bride and groom is the same. So it's so fun in the sense that every day when I wake up, it's just all these different criterias, all these different things that I have to research and look after for every of our clients. And at any one point, we're juggling, 30 to 40 clients at a time. So everyone has such a different mindset of like what a wedding is to them. And it's so fun to bring that vision to reality. So that's something that I love doing for, each and every one of our clients. And I love how different they all are. So that's probably the biggest thing.
It'd probably be really rewarding for you, starting from just like an idea of what they want it to look like and to be like, and then having that final day and seeing them so happy. So yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. So for the people that don't know what a wedding planner is, and why I reached out to you, because I actually saw a lot of synergies between what we do as financial advisors and what you do as a wedding planner. And for people that don't know what a wedding planner is or does, can you explain that to them?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess where to begin, really. There's so much that a wedding planner does. Like, we like to think of ourselves as like, that additional bridesmaid, that sister. Like, we're really there for every part of the process that's to do with weddings. So we first of all manage the entire planning experience for our couples first and foremost. And then it's everything that's really involved in that. So, just like timing, scheduling, managing their communication and administration. Like, you have to think, obviously, for a bride that's getting married, they might want 3-4 different quotes for photographers. So we look after all of that for them, and then, neatly summarize it to them, just so they're not overwhelmed with the back and forth of how much admin really goes on in the back end of wedding planning. Another thing that's really important, obviously, is budget management. So anything for a bride that they might have a vision, and it's really up to us to educate them and just say, okay, these are your inspo photos. This is kind of where you're at. This is what you're thinking. This, based on your guest numbers, based on your style, this is probably a really good budget to stick to, and just making sure we're tracking that. So they don't go out of hand, which is very easy to do in weddings when emotion is involved. You always maybe want like the next best thing or that level up, and that's when budget can go really out of control. So that's a really big part of planning as well. And then obviously just that process management. And one of the most important things as well is actually execution. So the day of, like some people we're working with for 3 months, others are 3 years. So that whole process and then watching how it all comes together, execution is a huge part of, the end of the planning.
Yeah, and I would have thought so. There's a few things there, obviously, in regards to the coordination, but I think also that time management as well too. So like what I'm we're living all busier lives. Yeah. We're all extremely time poor. These brides and grooms are busy kind of saving for this wedding as well, too. So they're off working full-time jobs, long hours, and being able to kind of outsource to yourselves to be able to professionally manage it and coordinate that. And one of the other big ones as well, too, that you mentioned was obviously around budget, which we see obviously as well, too. So we're seeing, early on, the people saving for that wedding. And more commonly than not, we're seeing budgets blow out. And obviously with us, we try to control those. And obviously working with you as well, too, we get to control those at another level as well, too, from a micro level. So because budget is really important, we, especially in like a world of like Instagram and stuff like that, where you're looking at these weddings that, sometimes I would imagine sponsorships behind those things. There's a lot of like back end stuff that people don't necessarily see or normal see. They're really wanting that, probably that, Kim Kardashian style wedding at a budget that is simply, totally out of their realm. So, we'll delve into that a little bit more, but it's very, very interesting because I think the other thing as well, too, talk about like the situation we've been in for the last 18 months or 2 years in this COVID scenario. It's probably thrown a lot of stress and a lot of mental pressure on a lot of these brides and a lot of these grooms who just want to get married. And obviously they've had all of these hiccups and all of that stuff. So, maybe just for me, like, how did you coordinate through that time? And like, because there's all that stress and also all of that coordination as well.
Yeah, it was definitely really tricky. But I think the difference between someone like us as the planner and someone, like a vendor is we have communication with these couples daily for a lot of them. So we're there obviously for every part of that process to kind of help manage that. So I guess honestly that starts with when someone receives their first contract for a vendor, which is where my HR background actually does help with this. So throughout the last 18 months, we just wanted to ensure that COVID clauses were in contracts, postponement clauses were in contracts, so that in the instance in which happened in the last 2 years, if someone needed to postpone to another year, we can just do a date transfer, which makes it easier for a lot of the time than having to lose deposits, lose everything that they've paid for and start all over again, because that's when I feel like people lose motivation and the excitement of getting married. So you still want to hold on to that as much as you can. And just communicating that with them whenever we speak to them and just saying, are you guys comfortable to postpone to a new date when travel does open, rather than cancel all plans, lose your deposits, and then start fresh. And I think that took a little bit of time for people to go, do we wait a year? Do we wait maybe 2 years? Or do we want to start having families and doing other things? So it was very personal to every couple. But those obviously that did like date transfer are in a better financial position in that sense because they've not lost the deposits.
Yeah, and that's what, unfortunately what we saw with a few people that didn't have those things done. And I think this is where you're talking about, we talk about it with our world about, you know, taking it to, you know, a professional level, or you know, really kind of take it. And this is where, you know, I see a lot of the synergies kind of coming in, you know, inserting contract clauses around COVID and stuff like that. You know, most people didn't even think about that stuff, or even know if they were available to them. So, you know, being able to insert those is very good. And I think having a sounding board through this time as well too, to make sure that it's still the most, you know, one of the most special days that you can celebrate, and having someone there. So yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. So let's talk about budget, because obviously it's a big thing about, you know, what we do, and you know, helping clients you know, budget that. And you know, we commonly say that a lot of people are, when they're with us, they're trying to really push that budget, okay, as much as they can. And on the other side, they've also, if they've come to us and they've already had their wedding, and I have a conversation about it, it was like it started at 50 and now it's 100, yeah, or it was 100.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for people when it comes to like budgeting for a wedding? And maybe let's elaborate a little bit more just on tips for that, but also where you see people maybe going wrong, and spending unnecessarily.
Yeah, I think that honestly, what's probably the biggest tip is just to prioritize what's important to the couple. So you don't, I think now with especially the rise of modern weddings, you don't need to go all out with absolutely every aspect of a wedding, every vendor, every feature. But I think really just getting down to saying, okay, what's more important to us as a couple? Do we value things like florals, or do we value things like lighting, or, you know, photo versus video, hair versus makeup? So I don't think you need to go all out in every single aspect, which I think traditionally a lot of people did. But now it's just going, okay, let's prioritize what's important to us so that the budget doesn't blow out, because we're really valuing, you know, what we want to do. So I think that's a really important tip. I think a lot of people as well, like, and I think that it like does kind of relate to the budget itself. They start at 50 guests, but then they end up at 100 guests. But then they don't think that the budget should increase. So it's kind of like really just educating them and giving them an understanding of saying, if you've doubled your guests, no, the budget doesn't double, but you do have to feed these guests, you know, like wine and dine these guests. So I think just managing like the guest list especially is where you can have control of the budget.
And do you think the expectation as well too? So I think that there's another thing that it's like, okay, well, it's only going to cost me say 50 grand, or it's only going to cost me 40 grand. And that just expectation is so far off, because they may be relating it to someone else's wedding, and everyone else's wedding is different. So I think there's a portion in there in the budget around just expectation. Like we want the Kim Kardashian wedding at, you know, 10 grand. It's like, set the expectation.
It does happen a lot of the time. And we always say, you know, in the very early phases, can you send us maybe some reference images, some inspo images, so we can see if you do have a budget of florals of 5K, we'll be there to say, look, that's not realistic when there's floor to ceiling florals in all of your info photos, which costs like 100K.
Yeah.
So it's our job, I guess, in that really early phase, just to educate them and just say, the cost of weddings is high, which we all know, but maybe let's just wind that back, keep the inspo that you love, but then just kind of feature that. So I think that definitely is where people get stuck with their budget, because they don't necessarily think, you know, a 50K budget you can get a 500K wedding. It just, unfortunately, as much as I wish it could, it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, and I think, like, obviously when me and my wife got weddings, some of the cheaper things actually were the most things that we remember. We got married at the Royal. We got married at the Royal Botanical Gardens in Melbourne. Yeah, and I think that cost us to rent it out, or like the place. I think like $600 or like $1,000 to actually have it for there. So like we're talking about not a lot of money to actually have the location. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. Like if you have to think about like what first thing came to my wedding was, you know, me standing on the makeshift altar that we had there in the Royal Botanical Gardens, and it wasn't expensive. And so there's a lot of sometimes inexpensive ways to have good moments. Like, don't get me wrong, we had more of a traditional wedding where we had the reception center, and we're both from, you know, European background, so we had a fair bit of people. But it was probably that didn't actually cost us a lot of money, which was the one thing that I kind of thought about. And I think, you know, you're talking about this as well too, around, you know, just setting expectations, and then, you know, what do they really value, the priorities out of that, and then working with budgets as well, which is great. We've actually got, Georgia, we've actually designed a bit of a wedding budget planner. So people people can start trying to go through like the flowers and stuff like that. I'll probably need to collab with you to kind of refine it because it was done a few years ago, but it would be good.
Yeah.
So if anyone's watching this or hears this and wants it, just hit me up and I'll share it with you and I'll get Georgia to glance her eyes over it.
That'd be perfect.
So off the budget now, this is more just generally. Maybe just some general tips for brides and grooms to be. Like just maybe, just share some of your wisdom in regards to this.
Yeah, I think honestly, what's probably the most important is just finding that core team of who your vendors and your group is. Because when you think about it, like your photographer, your videographer, your hair and your makeup artist, they are there in your face the entire day of your wedding up until you walk down that aisle. And they're such an important part of what your day is. So I think that finding the right fit for you, because it's going to be different for every single person, but finding someone and that team that you really, really connect with, I think it's worth the investment just to have that core group of people that you can absolutely trust and you know that they're going to be, and they're going to put you in the best possible mindset for the day. I think that's really, really important. And I think as well with back on the vendors, if you really, truly, really love someone, it's probably worthwhile investing in them, because if you then get someone that you don't necessarily love, but you say, I want this vendor's work, like, can you copy or can you do the same thing? You're not always going to get that result. So I think, and it doesn't need to be for every vendor, but I think at least if you love one, book them in, because they're essentially what's made you excited about planning. So I think they're the two most important for the vendor side of things. And then honestly, and this is something that we practiced ourselves on the wedding day, and I say to all of our clients, on the day of your wedding, take 10 minutes, just you and your partner, away from the crowd, away from the guests, go sit down, have a glass of champagne, and just look around you and enjoy the moment. Because like the day of the wedding, you were pulled in so many different directions. You would have been the same with your wedding. Like you guys are separated and you've just kind of gone, okay, you go here. Let's say hi and thank you to everyone. And you forget that it's about you two. And you really just need to just take that step back and go, wow, look at everyone that's here for us. And no matter what goes wrong on the day, because something always does go wrong, very small, but you just need to forget about that and just remember that it's about the two of you and just enjoy that. That's the best advice I could give.
And it's funny you say this. I got given that piece of advice before my wedding, and it was great bit of advice because you know what? Yes, there was things that went wrong. Talking about the Royal Botanical Gardens, I think we've had I think we were on the hottest day in probably the last decade. That day, it was just like scorching. There was winds. Great for some photography, but all of our umbrellas at the ceremony all broke. Yeah, and anyway, it was just like, let it go. We're here for us. But the other thing as well, too, and I think in reflection, you're the one who's going to watch those videos later. You're the one who's going to remember that wedding. Like as much as people will vaguely remember it, it's you. And I think the other thing as well, too, it happens so quickly. So just cherish it, because it is one of those things that, is a special moment between you and your partner. So yeah, I 100% agree. And then the other comment around having the A team, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that if it's a wedding, if it's your wealth creation, whatever it is, surrounding yourself with people that are experts in their field, okay, and around you is going to just make that situation just so much better. And also people that you relate to and you enjoy working with. If you don't enjoy working with people, as much as they might be great, you can't be next to them. So yeah, totally agree. So these are a couple of questions that I got from a few of our clients. Now, I thought that it's on Cash Talk, we haven't had a wedding planner before. This is kind of a left field thing, but the reason why I brought you on as well too, was because it's such a big event. Like I was mentioning, it's just, people plan for their houses, they plan for, have kids, whatever the scenario is. And wedding is just a big one. And traditionally, we haven't had a financial advisor and a wedding planner join forces and talk about this, but it's just so much of a big event. So in saying this, the client said this. One of them said, are people inviting less guests through COVID, not because of restrictions, but because they decided that they don't actually need more people?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think, honestly, it's a bit of a mix. There's no one answer there. We found that a lot of people during these COVID times have been waiting until all of the restrictions ease so that they can have their, 200 guests or whatever it might be that they were originally planning. But then you also have to think in 2 years, so much changes in your personal life. So maybe it's rather than reducing numbers, it's just kind of a reassessment of saying, who do we truly want at our wedding day? So maybe it's, deducting it by 10 or 20 people. And then I think on the other hand, a lot of people now, because they've been waiting for travel to open, they've kind of steered away from saying, let's have a 200 person wedding here in Australia and go overseas and have 40 or 50 people. So I think it's really dependent on the personal circumstances and what someone really values. So yes and no in a way.
Yeah. I think like from what we've seen from our clientele, the budget hasn't changed. The numbers may, that's what we're seeing from a financial one. So it's not people going, oh yeah, we're going to cut this budget in half. It's usually we're saying, we're still going to have the wedding. The budget's going to remain the same. So they're either, which we don't go into, they're either having the same amount of guests, or they're having less guests but a more quality wedding. So interesting, that one. Are people opting for less traditional option venue attire to save money? Is another question.
I think rather than for saving money, I think just generally with social media and the rise of all these Insta photos, people are moving away from traditional weddings to the modernization of weddings. So I don't necessarily think it's really for budget saving purposes, but definitely what a wedding looks like and the qualities of a wedding, I think in the last 5 years has changed drastically, honestly. And then
so reception centers like rare these days, or are they still having a lot of like reception centers, or is it more like wineries, farms, stuff like that? Is that what
it's still a mix? It's still a bit of a mix. I think that reception venues will always have a really strong place in the industry, but then definitely with these modern weddings, a lot of people are moving away from those and going to rent private estates or looking at wineries and kind of having local destination weddings as well that aren't in a traditional venue space.
Yep. Fair enough. All right. Another question we've got is, has DIY become bigger in recent years? Do you think that more people are trying to do it by themselves, or are you finding that you are in extremely high demand?
I think, again, probably because of rise of social media and Insta weddings, people are really trusting the experts. So I think in a way, DIY is probably not as prominent in weddings these days that I'm a part of anyway. And I think people really value saying, okay, I know that they are the expert florist or they are the expert videographer. I don't need to get my uncle to just capture videos on our phones anymore, and just trusting them. And I think that's been the whole premise of weddings now, less DIY and more just saying, you're the vendor, you're the expert, you do you.
So this is probably interesting for me.
Yeah.
People that do it DIY versus say someone who does it with a wedding planner, do you think that they're actually saving money, or do you reckon there's more mistakes and more stuff being done? Like, obviously from a financial advisor's perspective, I know that when people do their finances DIY, there's so many things that they're losing out on and so many opportunities that it would be better for them to seek financial advice. Yeah. Is that the same that you're finding with weddings as well?
It is in a way. I think that we know what package or what's like, I don't know, venue people should have. So a lot of the time there's so many markups with weddings. And one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is just being very honest and very transparent with our clients. So if they don't need the highest package with the highest inclusions, we will tell them that. And then they end up saving a lot of the time the cost of having a planner plus more. So I think when you really kind of have similar with you, that expert advice and opinions, you do end up saving in that way anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And it's actually, for the listeners and viewers on here, there's actually a bit of like neurological science behind this as well too, Georgia, as well. So when emotion is driving up, which in a wedding is huge, logic kind of goes the other way. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you got to think about it when you're there going, I want to get this reception center, or I want to have this beautiful, and the person on the other end is selling you the extra package or the extra package. It's your emotion that they're playing on. So your logic is actually dropping. So it's very, very likely that you're making a poor decision for yourself because emotions are driving high. So there's actually some science around this saying that it's for the people who can take that emotion away and just go with logical decisions, which is an advisor, that A team we're talking about, you usually have better outcomes as well too. So you've talked about this, and I think the answer is simply just going to be yes. The rise of Instagram. Yeah, it's literally, I remember when my wife was looking and we were looking at getting weddings, it's just like wedding, and all of these amazing things. And so from the rise of Instagram, have you seen weddings obviously blow out in regards to budgets and stuff like that and expectations from individuals?
I think so. There's so many aspirational images out there that people, and I did the same thing when we got married. You see them and you go, this is amazing. I want a version of this for ourselves. But I think that does create a little bit of that Instagram versus reality complex, because it's not always going to be that photo, because there's so much in the back end that people don't see behind a really pretty photo. So I think, with Instagram and all of that, it definitely changes people's expectations and just saying we really want that extravagant wedding, but maybe it's not viable.
And the other thing as well too is probably for people to acknowledge that there's a lot of sponsorship and a lot of stuff that goes in the background of some of these celebrities or these Insta influencers. And you'd see it obviously more than me. We see it on another side of our business, but I think that's the other thing as well too, just to understand that, that, I don't know, Givenchy thing that they've got, or that, YSL thing that they've got, that may be potentially sponsored. When you're looking at certain wedding dresses and certain venues as well, there's usually sponsorships that is coming in there. And, I think we talked about, flowers and stuff like that and floral stuff. And in regards to expectations and budgets around that, it could even be down to flowers and stuff like that. I would imagine Georgia as well too, just like these couple of $100,000 worth of flowers that are in these venues. Most of these stuff, not most of them, but a lot of them would be sponsored as well too, for these celebrities as well too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think for celebrities, there's a lot of endorsements that goes on with weddings, and a lot of the time it is mainly like attire. So if someone has like a beautiful gown that's 30K, 40K of custom detailed beautiful gown, they're getting that complimentary. And a lot of the time they're not keeping the dress either, they're returning at the end of the day. So there's so much that I guess goes in, like, that is involved in an Instagram wedding or an influencer or a celebrity wedding that a lot of people don't see.
Yeah, and that's for me, like that disconnect between that real world and that Instagram world that we talk about. It's so much like this sell, and it's this incidental sell that people don't realize. So just out of curiosity for me.
Yes.
And listeners will probably want to know this one as well. What's the most expensive wedding you've ever planned for?
So I can't say too much, but the figure is definitely north of 300,000 Australian dollars.
Wow. Pretty extravagant wedding, I would imagine.
Absolutely. We're not missing any element. Everything is definitely prestige, luxe, high end in every aspect of every vendor, every style moment, and just everything that's going to be involved from start to finish. So
if there's any spare invitations, just slip them my way. I'm more than happy to come. Me and my wife.
The invitations are ready at the moment, so I will send one your way right now.
Thank you. Love it. So, Georgia, that's it from me. I think it's been really, really great to understand, the weddings, the understanding about the wedding, the expectations, how a wedding planner can really help in this scenario, work with budgets and stuff like that, work with taking the stress away as well too. I think it's a really, really big thing that we've got for a lot of our clients, even for our clients' children as well too. It's a really big thing. So, for people that want to follow Georgia, jump onto Instagram, Miss Smith Weddings, and you can type that in and you'll find her pretty much straight away. If you needed to know anything more, reach out to me. More than happy to get you that wedding budget planner as well to point you in the right direction. But Georgia, once again, thank you very much for jumping on Cash Talk, and really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun chatting with you.
Thanks, Georgia. Cheers.
Thank you.